guys, Laura here. I'm back to do the second half of my August reading wrap up. In between the first video I filmed and this video that I filmed, we did get a little bit more information about school, so I am physically going into the building as of this date, which means I will definitely have more listening time, which is good because I do commute to the city. Um, who who knows if that's gonna last, but that's the plan for right now. So for this video, I'm gonna chat through the additional 8 books that I read. I did actually finish 2 books like the first 2 days of September, but I'm gonna count those in September. But yeah, so let's get into it. The first book that I finished reading was Asher and the Accidental Magic. Went to ALA. They were having a big push for their graphic novel line, which is from Random House. I kind of read this as a palate cleanser between Touch of Gold and Curse of Gold by Annie Sullivan because I didn't want to read another whole book. But this one was really, really cute. I just thought it was great. The one thing I liked about this was there was 2 different stories. So there was like part 1 and part 2. The stories did slightly connect, but it basically follows this young girl. Her parents and her wind up moving to this new town, and some things wind up happening. The first book is all about a plethora of pigeons that decide to kind of affect her, and she's kind of has to find a way to save the day. And the second one has to do with 3 wishes, I think. But yeah, it was really, really fun. I wound up liking it. I thought the art style, I kind of get a better picture. It was really, really cute. There's a little dog in this book that I just loved. I thought this was great. I definitely want to pick up the other ones. I read a couple of other ones from this line, and they're all very, very, very fun. I know that there's a sequel coming out as well, which I'll definitely be checking out. But I wound up giving this one 3.75 stars for review. If you have a young child that likes graphic novels, but wants to start reading more of them or slightly advanced ones, I'd recommend this one. I thought that the art style was very, very fun. The characters were great, and I just really, really wound up enjoying it. And did have some elements of school, so there was some elements about that as well. But overall, wound up liking it, giving it 3.75 stars. And then the next book I wound up reading was Curse of Gold by Annie Sullivan, which is the sequel to Touch of Gold. This is the sequel to Touch of Gold. I wound up really, really liking Touch of Gold. This book definitely dived more into the mythology of it, and I found that to be super fun. I thought that the elements between the characters were great. I thought the pacing of this book was not as strong as the first one, but the mythology elements was something that really, really captivated me a lot. We also had some other characters that kind of dived in, and we had some after effects from the villain in the first book, which I really, really liked. I think Annie Sullivan really masterfully crafted a retelling. I thought that she really took the King Midas myth and kind of turned it on its head. And it was just a very, very fun story. I still think I like book 1 a little bit more, but there was a lot more mythology elements in that book, and that was definitely the strength for me. I really, really enjoyed that part of it. I like that we had quite a few mythological figures and creatures that we saw in this read. The romance was still very, very prominent in this book as well. I just think the pacing was a little bit off and some points felt a little bit rushed, but I wound up giving this book 4 stars for review. Of getting a lot of blog tours from TBR and beyond. I wound up picking up The Quiet You Carry by Nikki Barslis. This book was so well done. I think this book is close to being a 5-star read. I thought it was excellent. This book follows a girl named Victoria, and the book starts off, the police are called to her house. She's taken out of her father's care for a very, very specific reason. So she's put in foster care, and you kind of follow her in that experience, but you're also kind of learning throughout the book why she was taken away. This book deals with a lot of heavy topics. It deals with sexual abuse, it deals with emotional abuse, it deals with depression, it deals with suicide, it deals with a lot of issues. I really love the TV show The Fosters, which dealt with a lot of foster care issues. This book definitely dives into the complexities of foster care, but also the heart, the effects of PTSD on it. There is abuse in this, I will say that, and it's very, very hard to read sometimes, but there's also some very, very heartfelt moments in this book in regard to friendship and in regards to teachers doing the right thing. And there's a very, very fun romance in this book that I really, really enjoyed. But romance is definitely not the heart of this story. I would say it's more of like an undercurrent because Victoria has a lot going on. But I think I really, really wind up liking this book. I would give this book probably like 4.5. I thought that there was some elements that like were really, really rushed pacing wise. Um, and I wish that it would have been fleshed out like a little bit more. But I really, really liked it. I wonder, like, I never cry when I read books, and I cried several times in this read. So it's a little bit of an emotional gut punch. It kind of reminds me of like a Katie McGarry read or like a Morgan Matson read, but very, 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 very heartfelt. And if you like the Pushing the Limits series by Katie McGarry, because it does have to do with the foster care elements, this might be a read for you. Also, if you like the Fosters, like I did, again, a very, very strong read. But yeah, I actually wound up liking it a lot. I wound up giving it 4.5 stars and definitely added this author to my contemporary reads author that I will definitely read more books by in the future. About is for another tour that I am, and that's Furia by Yamel Sayed Mendez. If I'm saying that wrong, I deeply apologize. But this one was actually a very interesting read. Follows this girl named Camilla. Camilla. She lives in Argentina, and her dream is to be a football star. That is her dream. However, her deeply conservative parents and her brother, who's also a football star, find this to not be the best course of action for her. But she is on an underground women's league football team, and they make the finals. And that kind of starts her on a path to kind of try to get where she wants to go. Eventually, she wants to go to college in America and play for a soccer team in America. That's like her big goal. So this whole book was very much like her on that journey. I will admit there wasn't enough sports in this book. Like I felt there was a lot of sports like at the beginning and a lot of sports at the end, but there wasn't enough in the middle. There is also a very, very strong romance in this book, but again, kind of like The Quiet You Carry, there was a good balance between it. And I like the elements of that relationship like a lot. I thought it was very, very fun. It wasn't like a type of romance I've ever really read before. I also really liked how this book dealt with like the political life and what's happening in Argentina, like, that has to do with like, the culture stuff. I thought that was really interesting and I was captivated. I read this book pretty fast. I really like the elements and the dynamics that were present with her family. And yeah, it was a very, very fun read and I went up giving it 4 stars. One picking up was Yes, No, Maybe So by Becky Albertalli and Alicia Syed. This book was definitely one of my favorite contemporary books I've read this whole summer. And it wasn't one that I was necessarily expecting to love so much. It does deal with a lot of political stuff. It says that this book is set basically after November 2016, after Trump was elected. And it mentions a lot of the policies. So it's set in the summer in a small town of, I think it's in like Alabama, a place that's deeply Republican. And you follow one character named Jamie, who's a Jewish young man living with the coolest family ever. And then you have Maya, who's Muslim, and her parents are on the brink of divorce. And their paths wind up crossing when they ultimately are campaigning for the same Democrat in a special election in the summer. And it becomes a little bit more personal to both of them than they're not really expecting. There's a bill on the table that basically will affect Maya's, the Muslims' right to wear headscarves. It was just a very, very like amazing read. Like I think that the book, the quote on the back says, "A book about the power of love and resistance," is perfect. Like I learned so much about campaigning for people and knocking on doors and making phone calls, and it was incredible. Jamie's grandmother in this book is a hysterical character. This book is just so funny. Like Jamie is a very, very funny character. He's just great. And there's some quotes that just like make me laugh and will definitely make my planner quotes for the year. It was also very, very emotional. There was a lot of moments of racism in this book that was really explicitly, pointed out for both Jamie and for Maya, and I thought that that was great. There's also a very, very this book also does go from like romance, friendship to maybe more throughout this book. but it also dealt on the complexity when you guys are not from the same religion. And I really, really like that. I think this book is definitely like a 5-star read. I really, really, really wound up liking it. And I recommend any young person pick this up because I think it really shows you that even when you can't vote, you still could have a voice in American politics. And I wound up really, really liking it. So definitely a 5-star read for me. Definitely is gonna make my top reads of the year, and I hope you'll consider picking it up. Finally finished listening to Winter by Marissa Meyer. This book is like 24 hours long as like an audiobook, but still such a strong read, such a solid end to the series. I definitely am going to add Wire and Nerves. I'm reading that in September with my book club, so I'm going to finally continue reading the series. But oh my god, it was just great. Like I actually really like listening to the audiobooks. I think I'm probably eventually gonna get them for like my own personal library. I think I have like one or two, but I don't have them all. But that book was incredibly long. That book was like I think 22 hours. But it was very, very fun. I love Marissa Meyer's writing. I still have to finish a couple of her other series and read her newest contemporary, but definitely a 5-star read. Really, really enjoyed it. And I hope she writes some more retelling soon because she has a very cool way of crafting them by far. Reading was Time of Our Lives by Emily Webberly and Austin Sigmund Broca. I thought, again, this was a book that I went in with super high expectations, and I wound up loving the concept. I think I wound up loving the self-discovery of the characters. The romance, like the relationship, I don't think was necessarily my favorite. I think I lean more on the side of the friendship of these two characters than romance, but I really, really wound up liking it. So this book follows two characters, Fitz and Juniper, and they are on a college tour in their senior year over a couple of weeks. Juniper is with her boyfriend, Fitz is with his brother, and they keep wind up interconnecting with each other, and they're very, very different. Fitz has no desire to go away to college. His mom basically force-fed him to go on this tour. Juniper is all about finding the perfect college for her. And they wind up becoming friends, and it winds up affecting their career paths in dramatic ways. I love the travel elements of this book so much. We have been in a quarantine for so long, so like seeing anyone go anywhere, even if it's like to New York City, which I live in and near and normally go there every single day because I work in the city, it was just nice to see them go to the Strand and like go to other cities. So as someone that's having a lot of travel wants in recent months, I just like that the fact that that was like an element in this book. It was very much the same when I read 4 Days of Me and You by Miranda Kennelly, because they were going to all these places and I was like, oh my god, I want to travel. But I will say that there is some sexual topics discussed in this book. But it was just really good. It also dealt with a lot of family dynamics. Like Fitz was having a hard time leaving his mom because his mom has a gene for early onset Alzheimer's, and Juniper's family is very, very close, and they don't want her to go. So I think that they were kind of dealing with like the opposite problems. But it was super fun. There's also Juniper's is in a relationship at the start of that book, but it was probably the element of that went in a way I wasn't necessarily expecting, but I wound up liking it. I don't think that this is my favorite of their reads. You do get to see the characters from, if I'm being honest, in this book, but I still wound up giving it 4 stars. I'm definitely going to read more by this author in the future. It's actually written by a real life couple. It was great. But yeah. And then the last book I wound up reading for the month of August was Quiet No More, which is the sequel to The Quiet You Carry. So this is the sequel, as I said. This is definitely more of like a direct sequel. Normally when you read companion books, it follows like a totally different character. This one still follows Victoria. But she is in college. She's out of the foster care system. She's living on her own in an apartment and going to a community college. She still is connected to like her boyfriend and her best friend, but she's in a very new situation. She's also dealing with the aftermath of the allegation she made against her dad, a potential court case, and she's also getting involved in a group about sexual assault on campus. And there's a lot of elements in play. There's also a relative that comes and tries to convince her to be lenient in her victim impact statement on her dad. There's just a lot going on in this book. This is definitely a book that, unlike the first book, I felt it a little bit more challenging to be in her head because she is going through a lot. It's a very, very intense book, I'll say that. It's definitely not a romance read. I'll say the romance is like a very, very big, like a very, very small subplot. But as someone that was in college, I think it's very, very realistic of what happens in college when you kind of change your world a little bit. I went to like a college 5 hours away from my home and my life changed dramatically. But I thought that it really did still deal with the effects of PTSD. There was a lot of friendship elements, and I like that she kind of was using her past in like a positive way or trying her hardest to. There was a lot of there was interaction with her and her dad that just made my skin crawl. But other than that, very, very strong read. I'm curious if we're gonna get more books in this series because I just like the side characters a lot. Like I like the boy, I like Kayla as a character, I like her friend. But yeah, it was a read that I think I like the first one a little bit more, but I definitely did um like the resistant element. Like there was a very, very strong resistant element about her sexual assault group and people accusing them of being taking down male voices, which is something that has been very, very prevalent in the Me Too movement. So I wound up enjoying it, wound up giving it 4 stars. I would definitely recommend, if you kind of like the Katie McGarry series or a hard-hitting contemporary, you do check out this author because she really does she really does it so well. And I feel like the foster care element is a type of is a setting and a concept that I don't often see in YA contemporaries. So those are all the books that I wound up reading in August. I actually had a pretty good reading month in August. Not my best. I said in my earlier reading vlog, I was dealing with some anxiety and stress due to work and everything else happening in the world. Guys, it's just not easy. I'll say that. Like, I think we're all doing the best that we can. Reading has always been my safe haven. And that's what I've been doing. But I'll definitely be back at the end of September with probably only one reading wrap up. I doubt I'll read this many books, but who knows? I might. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys later. Let me know in the comments what are some of the highlight reads that you read. For me in this read, for this wrap up, I think it was definitely Yes, No, Maybe So. And let me look at my list. Yes, No, Maybe So was definitely one of my highlights. And I guess Time of Our Lives as well. Like, I really, really like those two, and The Quiet You Carry. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye, guys.